Welcome to Tiny Show and Tell Us, the bonus series where you write in with your favorite science news or factoid. We read your email aloud, and then we dive deeper. I'm Sam Jones, and I'm here with my co-host, Deboki Chakravarti, as always. But today, we've got a little something, or someone, extra. We've got a guest. Our guest today is Mischa Stanton, the audio engineer for Tiny Matters. And we thought it would be super fun to have them on Tiny Matters with their own Tiny Show and Tell Us. Mischa, hi. Thank you for being here.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be on the show. This is so fun.
You do enough editing of yourself that you hear your voice plenty.
I have done production on every side of the podcast that you can imagine, and even sides of the podcast you wouldn't think would be necessary.
Interesting.
I've made so many podcasts for so many years. I've been an audio engineer and a full-time podcaster since 2016. That's 10 years. Jeez. And I have made all kinds of shows. I've made conversational shows. I've made narrative shows. I've made investigative journalism shows. I've made immersive fiction shows. I've made things that were blends of more than one of those things. I endeavor to bring character everywhere I go. Also, one of the reasons that I work in audio the way I do is because I find the mechanics and the physics of audio and sound fascinating. So I'm excited to be talking science.
The physics of sound is, I'm going to guess for Sam, definitely for me, low on the list of topics we're comfortable with, which makes it perfect for Tiny Show and Tell Us.
Yeah, the ongoing joke based in reality is that Deboki and I are slightly afraid of physics, you know? And it doesn't mean that we won't take on physics topics. It just means that we do it with trepidation and fact check ourselves 1 billion times.
Yeah, that's okay. I did so bad in biology, so we're covered.
Oh wow, we're hitting all the angles today.
Perfect. Well, so to catch everyone up before we get into our Tiny Show and Tell Us's for today, the last time we did this, we talked about the Plankton Manifesto and how NMR gave us the MRI. And of course, a reminder for all of you listeners that if you have a story you'd like for us to cover on Tiny Show and Tell Us, all you have to do is write us an email. You can email us at tinymatters@acs.org, or you can fill out the form linked in the episode description.
All right, shall we hop into it?
Let's go for it.
Do it.
All right, so I'm going to go first. We are going to be nice to Mischa and not make them
Oh God, thank you so
kick it
much.
off. Okay, my Tiny Show and Tell Us that I am sharing today is from listener Orion. And Orion writes, "Hello, Tiny Matters. I'm working my way through all of your old episodes. First, sorry to cut you off, Orion, but that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm at the one where you talk about altitude sickness. It reminded me of one of my favorite science facts. It's a bit morbid, but I guess that's fitting for spooky season. Other side note, this is how many listener stories we have. We're really behind." As you mentioned in the altitude sickness episode, the body does not have a way to detect a lack of oxygen, only the presence of too much carbon dioxide. This means that if humans end up in an environment where the atmosphere is pure nitrogen, they'll die from lack of oxygen before they have a chance to realize they're in danger. Tragically, this happened to 3 NASA scientists working in a chamber that was filled with nitrogen gas to prevent unwanted reactions. They forgot to replace the nitrogen with air before entering the chamber to work on the machinery inside and quickly lost consciousness because while they were breathing, no oxygen was going into their lungs. I first learned this fact from a book called The Disappearing Spoon, which I think listeners of this podcast would likely enjoy. Love the show. Best, Orion. Orion, thank you so much for writing in. I will also add that The Disappearing Spoon is an awesome book written by Sam Keane, who is friend of the pod. Can we call him friend of the pod?
Sure. At the very least, he's been guest of the pod.
He's a guest of the pod, but also I've interviewed him multiple times for multiple projects over the last 6 years. So I want to say he's friend of ACS, chemistry friend.
I've also realized there are a number of times where I'll be doing research for an episode and I'll be getting into some history of science thing. And at some point, the article, the podcast, the whatever that I'm reading, his name's on it. And I'm like, yep, of course. He got there first.
He has so many books, has written so many articles. Like truly, Sam Keane's great. Go read The Disappearing Spoon. Let's talk about this story that Orion submitted. March 19th, 1981, NASA was preparing for the maiden voyage of Space Shuttle Columbia. So this was a dry run. There was a group of 5 technicians, and they were cleared by NASA safety supervisors to enter Columbia's aft service compartment. I had no idea what an aft service compartment was. It's often called an aft equipment bay or, quote, hellhole.
Sure. I was going to say the butt.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Because it's the unpressurized maintenance space that's located toward the tail, the aft, as Mischa would say, the butt of an aircraft.
It's so weird because I just don't think of the butt as unpressurized, though.
Devoki, I love that. Okay. So the technicians, they get in there and then they almost immediately collapse because what they didn't know, and apparently the safety supervisors also didn't know, was that a nitrogen purge of the compartment had just been done. So the idea was to flush out any remaining oxygen to remove any chance of fire. So get rid of the oxygen to prevent fire, fill it with nitrogen, but they didn't know that.
That's just the whole thing that I've been thinking as you were talking. And I've dug into a couple of other like sort of history of NASA stories before, that there's just like 80,000 bajillion things that have to go in a precise sequence. Mm-hmm. And there's just not nearly enough. Like there's always too many things that like it's just impossible for everybody to keep all of them straight at all times.
Yeah, they've learned from it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, to my knowledge, this has not happened since. And
right, it's not like they make the same mistake twice.
Right. But yeah, no, it was one of these just horrible accidents. It didn't seem like anyone was just not taking their job seriously. Like there was a very, very much a misunderstanding of what was happening. So what happened, just thinking on a physiological level, is when you breathe in pure nitrogen, it overpowers the oxygen that's in your body. So very quickly that oxygen, it's washed out of your lungs. Your blood becomes oxygen deprived, meaning your organs, including your brain, stop receiving the oxygen that they need. So 3 of these 5 technicians ultimately died as a result of the nitrogen gas exposure. And it was weird because as I was doing research for this, I was finding different numbers. And the reason why is that John Bjornstad was one of the technicians. He died in the helicopter on the way to the hospital. So acute exposure death. Forrest Cole, another technician who died, actually went into a coma and died 2 weeks later. But the reason that I was seeing just 2, not 3, is that the 3rd technician, Nick Mullen, died 14 years later from complications of injuries sustained. So I was looking at initial reports from NASA, like the primary reports and sort of investigations into what had happened.
Do you know if that was like related to like, did the man who died, like, was it because he was first in the room or? Like...
Yes, John Bjornstad entered the aft compartment first, and Forrest Cole and William Walford were right behind him. Shortly after. As a reminder, Forrest Cole was the 2nd person who died, slipped into a coma, died 2 weeks later. Interesting that William Walford, to my understanding, is that he was okay. It's not clear when Mullen entered based on what I've read, but apparently he passed away 14 years later as a result, like I said, as a result of the long-term complications from this incident. But it appears that he suffered permanent brain damage from the event, which is just awful. Another thing to note, when I first read this story, I didn't realize that the Columbia shuttle had been in operation for so long because when I think about the Columbia shuttle, unfortunately, I think about the Columbia disaster in 2003. Right. So apparently the Columbia's first flight was in 1981. The final flight, of course, was in 2003. Columbia was NASA's first spacefaring orbiter, and it actually completed 27 successful missions. But it was on February 1st, 2003, during its 28th flight, which was STS-107, that the orbiter broke up when it was re-entering Earth's atmosphere, and all 7 astronauts died on board. So I feel like this story of these technicians who died due to nitrogen gas exposure, in a way feels like it gets overshadowed a little bit in Columbia's history by the 2003 disaster. But I don't know. I had somehow not heard about this.
I was thinking about because I was talking about Artemis recently with people, and people were talking about like their favorite parts of the mission, and I was thinking how like one of my favorite parts was before the launch, which is not favorite, but it was like the thing, like the part of the story that had stuck with me is how many times they had to keep pushing back the launch, in part because of these rehearsals. There's one rehearsal in particular where I think there was maybe like a hydrogen gas leak or something like that, but just like clearly a serious thing that you do not want to happen.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, and like I don't love that there was a leak. But I do love the moment because I feel like it just reminds you that, A, this stuff is so dangerous. Like, obviously, like, none of us are out here thinking, like, launching a rocket is casual. But I think it's sometimes easy to be like, yeah, but we've done it.
Right.
No, it's dangerous every time.
Yeah. And then it takes so much work. There's so many things to keep track of, like Mischa was saying before. You know, there's just all of this. It's like impossible to keep track of everything. So it's like incredible to actually find these issues. It is important. It's a huge part of the process. And I think it's cool that they figured that out before there were people in the spacecraft.
Mischa, had you heard about this?
No, I had not heard about this at all. A lot of my research I used to do, just for fun, I used to do a lot of research into like early NASA history. So I know a lot about like Apollo 1. So I haven't heard about more recent safety mishaps. I don't even know what you call it. Like it's kind of one of those things, like you hope there's enough rehearsal time and, you know, redundancy to like to mitigate every single thing that you can think of. But there's always going to be stuff you can't think of. So that's a hard one to catch.
Right. Well, Mischa, are you ready? Would you like to share your tiny show and tell?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I think so. One of the things that has constantly fascinated me is the system of human hearing. I love like how sound goes from vibrations in air to electrical thoughts in brain meat. That pathway is just absolutely fascinating to me. And one of the coolest parts about it is this thing called the basilar membrane, which exists in your inner ear. It lays along the cochlea, which is the spirally thing that looks like a snail shell. And one of the coolest things about it is that if you laid it out flat, that you can mark out sections of it by pitch. Like you can identify parts of it that are a specific pitch perception. It's called a tonotopic map, where you lay out the tones across the topology of the thing. I think that's just so cool. During my training, I also had to learn about the human eye and the perception of the eye. And the eye has all of its little color and light dots sort of mixed together, almost like your TV screen. You know, they're all kind of mixed in so that you can take in all of the light and then parse it out later. With the ear, it's just like a one-to-one linear relationship with that membrane. And I don't know, it makes it look like my audio editing software in a way that I can understand well. I think it's neat. I think it's very cool.
It is really cool. And actually, when we were chatting with you before the episode and you said, essentially, I just want to talk about something that gets us talking about structures of the ear.
I was like, whatever fun fact you need me to bring so that we can talk about the structures of the human ear, please.
One day we'll do an ear episode just for you.
Thank you.
We really should. We really should. Because I didn't even know. Is it called a basilar membrane? How do you say that?
I learned it as the basilar membrane. I also learned I took like a couple of basic like perception-based neurology courses in my undergrad. I do not have a graduate degree. I only have I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, so my science classes were minimal. But but I learned it from someone who was like an Indian immigrant to South Africa, so his accent was very strong. Shout outs to Dr. Vinath Jagaru.
I feel like there have been in the past times when Sam and I have recorded, and I don't remember what word. There's one word a long time ago where we said it very differently, and I think it's because I learned it from my parents, and like they're from India, grew up like with British English, and so like I forget what the word was, but I just remember being like, no, but this is how I know the word.
Mm-hmm.
You and I said it differently.
Yeah. And I think when I said it, you thought it was wrong. And maybe, I don't know, who knows? But I think I was like, no, but this is how I learned it from my parents.
Yes. And in addition to that, it's funny. There are a number of words, Boki, where I feel like you and I have probably read them 7 million times, but never had to say them out loud. Right. And then it's in a script and we start talking and we realize we should look that up.
Yeah.
So getting back to the basilar membrane.
The ears.
Well, so I didn't know this membrane existed.
Mm-hmm.
Already that was new to me. So what I learned in looking this up is that the base is narrower and stiffer. And then as it moves up, it gets wider and more flexible.
Yeah, it gets kind of flappy at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gross.
Cool.
Yeah, it is a little gross. But yeah, so the different density of the structure vibrates at different frequencies of sound. So the outer ear and like the middle ear are very mechanical structures where you're just taking in vibrations and they're being translated by the eardrum, and then they go up against the three tiniest bones in your body. But all of that is still mechanical, and then it sort of translates into this like conical spirally waterbed that vibrates at different bits of it depending on what you're listening to. And then the basilar membrane lies on top of it like a conductive blanket, and each little spot of the cochlea that like vibrates corresponds almost 1-to-1 with a nerve signal that gets sent to your brain. And that's where mechanics become thought, and that's crazy to me.
And Jaboki found another kind of cool thing, I think related to testing.
Which I'm curious now, because you said that you had taken some of these.
I went to art school, but I went out of my way to like get some more science knowledge. I ended up with a psychoacoustics minor.
Oh,
cool.
Okay, so I feel like what I'm about to say, you're going to actually probably know, and this is going to be
maybe
basic.
it was 15 years ago. We'll see.
Well, have you heard of something called the Weber-Fechner law?
No, what?
Oh, okay, fine. Okay,
cool.
This is really exciting for me then. So when you had also initially suggested this Tiny Show and Tell Us today, I think one of the things you had mentioned is this idea that our pitch perception is logarithmic, that the way that we perceive pitches are like distributed as a logarithm. And so
I thought that was because the cochlea was shaped like a spiral, and apparently that's a very common misconception, but I was wrong.
But it is fascinating because there is a way that perception is logarithmic, and that's what the Weber-Fechner law is about. So for people who are like not sure what I mean by like perception being logarithmic, there's a lot of different ways to think about that. But one might be like thinking about if you have a light turning on in a room, like if you're going from complete darkness, going from 0 to like a small light is like a big jump in what you're perceiving. And as you keep ramping up the light from there, you're going to perceive that as like an increase in light, but how big that increase is going to start going down. It's not going to look like as big of an increase as it did in the beginning when you went from no light to like a little bit of light.
Yeah, this is not hearing, this is light-based, but that's because our light-based perception is contrast-based. It's based more on the contrast between light and darkness than it is an objective value.
Yes, that's a good point. And so there's also this really cool thing where apparently if you ask like kindergartners to put numbers on a line between 0 to 100, they'll tend to put smaller numbers close to 0 and bigger numbers close to 100, but they won't like space them out evenly. They're kind of putting them on like a logarithmic map, which is really cool.
Fascinating.
Yeah, this article that I read, it's from 2013. It's a really great article. Mischa, I'm going to send it to you.
Please send this to me. Yeah.
You might love this. It's called Why Do We Perceive Logarithmically? They said, like, if you have numbers 1 to 10, these kindergartners will put 3, like, halfway between 1 to 10.
Yeah, well, and a 3 decibel increase equates to a doubling in perceived loudness in an audio signal. So there is something about 3s being, like, an increment, like, closer to 1 than to 10.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something so weird about it. And so the thing that's interesting is once you get to 4th graders, they will actually start to map numbers out linearly. So there is a time where that switches. But according to these researchers who wrote this article, if you ask adult members of the Munduruku tribe, they're an Amazonian indigenous group, and they don't have as much formal education. If you ask them to map the numbers out, they will still keep with more of that logarithmic mapping where the small numbers are closer to 0, the bigger numbers are closer to 100.
The linear scale being the conformist view, the everybody is actually right-handed and you should just get behind it sort of thing.
Yeah. And so it suggests that like that linear thing is something we learn. It's like not actually like natural to what our brain is doing. Cool. And so there are a lot of ways that nonlinear scaling is something that shows up in perception. We talked about like light, it shows up in pitch, but it also shows up in things like loudness, our perception of distance, of our perception of a time delay. Like, it just shows up again and again, and which is so cool. So for example, doubling the force you put on your hand doesn't necessarily feel like twice the pressure. It'll actually feel like less than double the pressure.
Whoa.
If you double the salinity of water, that doesn't actually cause it to taste twice as salty. Yeah.
That it's all parts of perception. I was too busy focusing on the hearing part because I think that's cool. I didn't think about the rest of it.
Yep. Yeah. So it's like all over the place. And so,
if your stomach's twice as empty, that doesn't mean you feel twice as hungry.
Yeah, I think that actually was one of them. I think that's like your perception of your hunger is like related. I'm so excited. I feel like I just got to blow your mind.
Yes.
And I mean, fair enough, this also like blew my mind when I was looking this up.
Human perception absolutely fascinates me. I think it's the single coolest thing. Like, it's the border between the realm of thought and the realm of the soul and physical reality. It's like the curtain between those things. It's fascinating to me.
Yep. This is like all part of a field that is called psychophysics. So there was a physicist named Ernst Weber in the 19th century, and then another person named Gustav Fechner who did more work based on Weber's stuff that basically found that like above a certain threshold of perception, the perceived intensity of something is related to the logarithm of the stimulus intensity. So it's not going to be like that linear mapping.
Yeah, that's wild. And of course, you say that, like, I trained in psychoacoustics. Well, acoustics is a subfield of physics that deals with sound. So psychoacoustics would be the subset of psychophysics that deals with sound perception.
Mm-hmm.
Rad.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I don't know why exactly this is the case. That's part of what this article is exploring. And I think especially because it's like shows up in so many different aspects of our perception. I don't know if there's going to be a universal explanation, but it is kind of interesting to think about because I think one of the questions they say is like, you know, like if you're looking at prey out there in the wild, is counting like 2 versus 4 prey important? Probably not. But if you're looking at like 2 versus like 100, that's a very big difference. So like maybe our brains are automatically doing some kind of assorting, or like maybe that's part of like why that perception difference is important. It's more about like what are they close to, or just the brain is a vast supercomputer that we don't know how it was programmed. That's because it wasn't programmed. That's what it is. It's like, which is what's so cool.
It was vibe coded.
Yeah. I mean, nature is just out here vibe coding. Like that is what evolution is.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. I also think that the brain is like our next huge frontier. I know that this is like a common thing in science, but like I love the brain, and I'm so excited to see what we learn about it the more we're able to study it and map it out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to Orion for submitting to Tiny Show and Tell Us, and thank you, Mischa, for joining us. Mischa, tell us where the people can find you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. If you're interested in more of my work, you can check out my website, mischastanton.com.
Tiny Show and Tell Us is a bonus series from Tiny Matters created by the American Chemical Society and produced by Multitude.
You can send us an email to be featured in a future Tiny Show and Tell Us episode at tinymatters@acs.org, or you can fill out the form that's linked in the episode description. And we'll see you next time.
Bye!
Bye!